Hello, welcome to Beyond Sunday, a podcast of Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Corey Lucivo, and today we are joined by Bob Lunn and Peggy Zimmer. They are a couple of leaders in our Life Challenges ministry. How are you doing today?
Well,
We're
good to
good.
see you.
Good. So, not everybody knows about the Life Challenges ministry. Can you tell us what does that mean? What does that include?
Life Challenges Ministry is a subset of an overall congregational care ministry. And Schweitzer has had a congregational care ministry for a couple of decades now. Started with Stephen Ministry, individuals coming alongside individuals. And then we began to recognize that there are all kinds of challenges that people go through in life, most around the area of loss of one kind or another. And those have to do with grief, it could be loneliness, it could be changes in health, all kinds of different things. So Peggy and I were pretty early involved in working with the Grief Share Ministry. We used a developed program, 13-week program, pretty lengthy, and that was successful, and we had people come to it. And since that time, we've refined that program, and we've added some other programs that Peggy can talk about.
Well, what we did is instead of the 13-week, we came down to a 4-week book study instead of the 13-week DVD-driven study. So it's called Recovering from the Losses of Life, and it's by H. Norman Wright, and it talks about all different kinds of losses, not just through death. It can be a medical diagnosis, it can be financial issues, or loneliness. So we've done that a few seasons now, and we're about ready to kick off a new season of it. But we also have other classes that we've done. We did a loneliness class in the fall of 23, and then recently Bob did a class for parenting adult children, which we had a really good turnout for.
There's a lot of interest in that,
A lot of interest.
including from us.
Yeah.
We learned as much as we taught.
Yeah.
Sure. That's fantastic. So what have you found the benefit to be of kind of having this shorter, more focused experience around grief and loneliness?
I think it's easier for people to make a commitment. People who are experiencing grief really don't want to commit, and they're probably not in a position to commit to real long-term things. And some people find solace quicker than others. So they may not need the full 13 weeks, and some need more. But that
It takes courage, too, to come forward and sit in a group where you may choose to share or not share, but to deal with difficult issues in front of other people.
Oh, yeah.
And so we want to honor that courage by not demanding so much of the participant in terms of time or commitment that it makes it difficult for them to show up.
Yeah. What led you two to become a part of this ministry?
Well, I was a licensed social worker up in Minnesota where we lived prior to moving down here, and I worked with a hospice program, and I worked in nursing homes. So dealt with lots of grieving people and grieving due to death or medical changes. Just sheer on aging presents a lot of issues in grieving.
Yeah, when I moved here about 25 years ago, we were starting a Stephen Ministry program. Our individuals come alongside other individuals, men with men, women with women. And Pastor Lampert started that up here, and Jim Mason and I were in the first class of people that took that. And that hooked me on the benefit to other people and the benefit to myself of serving folks who are going through a difficult time. We don't do Stephen Ministry as it's structured anymore, but we do similar kinds of things. And so I've been at it 25 plus years.
Wow, that's incredible. So what has that meant for you then to be a part of this ministry? What has been the impact in your lives?
I really appreciate seeing people be able to move through their grief and the ability for them to come alongside other people who are then going through it as well. That's even more helpful to folks than hearing it from us. Although we both experience grief and different issues, but sometimes it's a little bit more in the past. And sometimes it's nice to have just somebody who's gone through it a little bit more fresh.
I think there's scriptural reasons for being involved in this too. John 16:33, Jesus says, "I told you these things so that you can have peace. You will have trouble in this world, but be brave. I've defeated it." We see that, but we need to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And Paul advises us in Galatians. He said, "Carry one another's burdens, and in that way fulfill the law of Christ." And that's a motivator for me. I don't have the ego to say I'm doing Jesus' work, but I'd like to think I'm doing some hands and feet, and that's it's a form of faith to act out that way.
And that's why I do the classes with Bob, because he always brings me back to that, because that is the reason for doing it.
Absolutely.
The right answer is always Jesus, isn't it?
There's always
Absolutely. What kind of change have you seen in the folks who have been through these classes?
Gee, I think of I don't want to use a name, but I think of one young woman who has joined our ministry. She's gifted in this area.
Yeah.
She lost a spouse, was devastated by that, had grown children, has a lot of issues, but is a very healthy individual. And she lit up being a part of this and said, "I want to do this. I want to be a part of this." And she's now a key member of our team.
Yep.
And we've seen this more than once. I can think of 5 or 6 different.
Yep.
Can you? Different people that.
Well, in this last holiday grief class that we had, I relied on her because I was kind of going through something a little bit more fresh myself, because my brother passed last Father's Day. So I wasn't quite sure how I was going to go into it, but she carried the load. Yep.
Not everybody, it's not for everyone to get into a grief class. We've had some folks who are deeply, deeply hurting, and maybe the answer for them is more individual care.
Or it's too fresh and they need to wait until the next session.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
They're still bleeding too much, too.
Yeah. It can take a different trajectory in different people.
I know you've talked about this, Peggy, as how different it is for everybody, the different causes of grief and loneliness.
Well, and we're all different people, so we're going to react to different things in different ways.
Sure. So I understand you have one of these experiences coming up soon. You've mentioned grief and loneliness. Can you tell us more about what's coming up?
Well, so starting on the 15th of March? No,
March
the 11th. The 11th of March, we're going to have a 3-week grief class on Tuesday nights from 5:30 to 7. We wanted to get people in and out before it got dark. So we're going to have a light snack supper for them. And we're going to do the 3 weeks of grief based on this book. And then we're going to segue into 3 weeks of a loneliness class based on a different book. People can come to both classes, or they can come to one or the other, whichever they feel would benefit them. So the grief will be March, and the loneliness will be April, and will be done by Easter.
Great.
And in the falls, we have traditionally done, now for several years, we've done facing the holidays, how to anticipate and get through the holidays if you're grieving, or let's say if you're divorced, which are similar but different. Different
Holidays
sorts of
are
issues.
so fraught with tradition and family that
Yeah.
it's really, it's very difficult for people to get through that.
Yeah, and can you just share really quickly about you mentioned there's 3 weeks on grief, 3 weeks on loneliness. There's often an overlap there. What's kind of the difference? How might someone know which one they should come attend?
Well, that's a
That's
good question.
That's got some that's depth to it.
Yeah. I'll let you take that one first.
There are lots of reasons someone can be lonely that don't necessarily involve high levels of grief. So, for example, we have bedridden people that can't get out of their homes and can't come in to worship. I visited one in the hospital the other day, a Schweitzer person, and she said, "I just miss being able to see Spencer." Because she can't be there, she can't see what's going on. She's socially isolated. She's not mobile and can't get up and get around. That's loneliness of a type.
Though there are different
That's
kinds of loneliness, and social
Yeah.
isolation doesn't necessarily mean you are lonely,
No.
but it can.
It can,
Yeah.
usually does.
And solitude can be a helpful thing. Doesn't necessarily mean loneliness.
The kid about Jesus, he loved to go off in the wilderness and pray. He did it frequently. And or I'm leaving you guys. I'm going to the top of the hill to pray.
See, there he goes again.
Solitude was important.
Yeah.
And to some people it is. Now, introverts and extroverts. Peggy's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. She thrives on contact with people. I need my alone time, some of that. And that leads to different kinds of loneliness. How many friends do you need? So, we cover all of that in the course, and we try to take an individual, let people talk about where theirs comes from.
I think one of the big things about it is that it's kind of like a support group in that you are understanding that people are going through the same type of things.
Yeah.
So we give them education, we give them the knowledge that they're not alone. And we try to give them the information that they have done this all before and they can do it again, and just to help them wake up their coping mechanisms.
You can tell she's a social worker
Sorry,
by
lingo,
trade.
lingo.
No, really, and because
Absolutely.
it's what do we do from here? What's the next step? What are your options? All of
Absolutely.
that is
So,
important.
so if someone is curious about this this upcoming class, what might be a next step they can take towards getting involved in that?
Well, we'll have registration online, or they can talk to Sheila, Bob, or myself. For sure, the three of us will be in it, and others may be a part of it as well. Kind of depending upon how many people we have coming to the class. That'll
Great.
depend upon the leaders.
Great, great. Well, Bob, Peggy, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all who listened, tuned in, or are watching. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday and beyond.